can we fix the quarterback situation in Cleveland? What is going on, Baker?
Listen, I plead the fifth, but I don't know. When I was healthy, I was starting to get pretty damn good there.
That's fair.
There you go.
Fair. Not my problem anymore.
All right now.
Man, you would think the Kelces of all people would not need to use rage bait in order to gain attention with their audience. But here we are. And it seems so rehearsed. It's almost as if those guys went over it 10 different times before they finally got the take that they thought was right. It's giving Real Housewives vibes. That's what it's giving right now. It's not giving podcasts. It's not giving professional show. It's giving Real Housewives. And to be honest with you, they can yuck it up now if they want to. But when they see Shador playing, ain't going to be no yucking it up. And people are going to pull that clip a year from now and go, well, this didn't age well. Like rotten milk. And let's pretend for a moment here that it was authentic. You're asking Baker Mayfield that question. You literally understand what you're doing in that time frame. At the bare minimum, they plotted before he even came on and they said, hey, man, make sure and react really hard, all right, when Baker starts whatever he says. Because they know Baker Mayfield, of course, he's going to be the one to say, no, it's not my problem. And it's not. I'm not mad at Baker. He didn't really say anything wrong. He just said it's not my problem. Could he have shown love to Shador? Of course he should have. Or could have. But he's bitter. And you know, the thing is that clip's been actually floating around now for a couple of days. But ESPN finally got to it, and it's just kind of like, okay, look, man, we're going to give this about 30 seconds and move on. Because everybody's going to feel real silly come December. Because here in a couple of years, this league could very well belong to Jane Daniels and Shador Sanders. And I'm not kidding. And for anybody wondering, I'm not jumping on the Jane Daniels bandwagon. For the last 2 or 3 years that he was in college, I said specifically there wasn't a more pro-ready quarterback than Jane Daniels. That's all I'm saying. Here is a clip from the Big Ten Network. Check this out.
Going to name one starter, potentially go with two. And 2 weeks later, they play Nebraska, a team that I'm extremely high on. So those first 4 games of this Michigan schedule, we're going to know who the Wolverines are.
No.
Look, I'm going to explain something. A season ago, 8 teams from the SEC were ranked preseason in the top 25. Exactly one of those teams ended up winning a playoff game, and that team was Texas. And let's be very clear here. You're saying, well, this is Big Ten. Big Ten, SEC, all these people that voted a year ago, you think that voting in favor of Alabama and some of these other football teams doesn't favor them? These people are all sitting around in these same circles. They have the same friends. They have the same like interest. And that like interest is money. Didn't you see the way a season ago, the way that everybody reacted from ESPN during the CFP rankings when they thought Notre Dame was going to play Alabama? Oh, Notre Dame and Alabama. What? Why? Why would that game make sense? Why does anybody think that game would have been good? First of all, the last time that those two teams played each other in a championship game, or come on, does anybody remember the BCS when Alabama ran through Notre Dame? That Alabama team from over a decade ago was better than that Notre Dame team from over a decade ago. This Notre Dame team from last season would have throttled that Alabama team from last season. And how do we know that? Different coaches, different players, different assistants, different coordinators, different philosophies. Because it's been over a decade. Alabama, the logo, may not change. Alabama, the players, absolutely change. And that's what I'm sick of. Brand recognition football. As long as we're voting on the logo, then we're not voting the best. Don't forget, a season ago, it wasn't Alabama that was held out because of their record. It was Alabama that was held out because of the rules that were in place for the voting system, which technically doesn't make it a playoff. It makes it an invitational. They ranked ahead of Clemson and got in over them. Clemson got in because they were a higher ranked conference champion. But even then, it took Alabama getting throttled by OU and losing to a mediocre Vanderbilt team before they were even finally slided as the first out, when they weren't that good. Does anybody remember also last season at the beginning of the year when in week 0, Georgia Tech beat Florida State and so many people, except for myself, they called it an upset? Why did they call it an upset? Because Florida State was ranked number 10, even though a single snap had been played that season. They were ranked number 10 in the country. They finished the year 2-10. As a matter of fact, out of the top 25 teams that were preseason last year, 6 of them finished with losing records. Losing. Slightly over a quarter of all those teams finished with a losing record. Obviously, Florida State far and away the worst at 2-10. Then remember that the next week, A&M lost in their backyard to Notre Dame. The following week, Northern Illinois beat Notre Dame in their backyard. Northern Illinois ended up becoming a top 15 football team. They finished the season horrifically. Notre Dame ended up competing for a national title. We don't know what teams are going to look like in September or October. We have zero clue because we don't know what those wins or losses are going to mean for anybody down the road. You know, I talked about Georgia Tech being Florida State. Georgia Tech finished, 7-6 last year? All they did was reveal how bad Florida State actually was. And no, that game didn't set the tone for the season. If Florida State was really that good, they would have bounced back and they would have won, 9-10 games in a row. But they were given the benefit of the doubt, and it was also kind of an apology, a nice little head start. Here you go. We'll start you off at 10. This is for last season. Our bad. Which is my final thought. As long as they get the head start, they have the advantage. They have the advantage because, again, you look at Alabama and what it took for them to not be in the CFP a season ago. They were 9-3. And they were given the benefit of the doubt with a football team that hadn't played any snaps that season under a new head football coach. Oh, they had that big win over Mercer. South Florida, man. That was revealing. How good was Wisconsin a season ago? That's the point. You didn't know at the beginning of the year how good or bad Wisconsin would be. So how do you hold that against them? Because of the way that they finished. Hey, that game isn't what we thought it was. And we know that because of how Alabama finished the year. But as long as we have a voting system as opposed to a rule system, then this is going to continue and the blue bloods will continue to prevail. That's how they do it. It's got nothing to do with transfer portal or NIL money or forcing universities to have a salary cap, fair market value, none of that stuff. None of that will ever matter because what will happen is as long as the other teams are getting voted above and they're getting better chances, eventually players are going to go, well, I won't make as much money there, but I can win a championship. I can compete. That's how they're going to get over there. And I've seen a couple of people in my comment section, that they've really thought about combining like a voting system with the BCS, which they basically did that during the BCS era, right? Because the BCS took into account its own tabulation, plus the Associated Press, plus the coaches poll, which, by the way, don't forget, they were just a BCS champion. The coaches still decided who the national champion was for the longest time in that little scenario. The point of what I'm saying is that computer system was manipulated and can be manipulated because it will be trained to give favor over certain conferences, and it will be trained to give favor over certain teams. So in Alabama, a Notre Dame, a Michigan, an Ohio State, they will all still possess an advantage. We need a rule system that is ironclad. Well, how do you do that, Drew? Well, it's pretty simple, my guy. You have a rule system for playing in the championship game for your conference, don't you? Okay, then. They make it sound like it's quantum physics, but it's not. Because I guarantee you the rules that were written that got Alabama voted over Clemson, but not in over Clemson, were the same ones that were written over a 2 o'clock afternoon Chardonnay. Hell, give me the napkin. Give me my drink. You know, that's legitimately how that went down. And that's how it's going to continue to go down. As long as we don't have a rule system in place, but they know that. And because they understand the beneficial aspect of it, which is the financial gain of Alabama versus Michigan in that brand, then they know what they are doing. But the NCAA, what they are acting like, especially the committee, is that they are Dana White trying to put together the big money fight. That's essentially what it boils down to. And as long as it's allowed, then that's what they're always going to do. We're not talking about the best actually being in. We are talking about who they decide to vote and invite, because it's an invitational. I'm inviting you to be in this little tournament that we've got here. But we're calling it a playoff. Real quick here, Jerry Jones. Same old, right? Jerry Jones talking about Micah Parsons. He's already getting $20 million. Look, Jerry is Jerry, and he's great for a soundbite, and that's the only reason why anybody interviews the man. And whether he's right or wrong, it's not going to matter because everybody's just going to hammer him. I'm just saying. Breece Hall, I don't understand how people don't get this. Breece Hall is not saying the Jets did not draft him. Breece Hall is saying this current regime, this staff, they didn't draft me. Does anybody remember when it all went down with Tim Tebow and, Coach Fox and John Elway was GM, and what was the thing that became the narrative? Well, these guys didn't draft Tim Tebow. They didn't want Tim Tebow. They inherited Tim Tebow. So he's putting the narrative down. We know what's going on. These guys didn't draft me. They may not have wanted me. Regardless, I'm going to play like they don't. I'm going to prove myself all over again to this new staff. He shut it down before it even began. And I'm with it. I'm just saying. All right, everybody, I am Drew Duncan. Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram is all at Drew Duncan Radio. I am wherever you are listening to broadcast. Take a device to play the Drew Duncan Sports Show. I am on TikTok and YouTube, the RL Drew Duncan, the real Drew Duncan. We are under construction back here. About a week, we'll be ready. Everybody stay safe, take care of yourselves, and have a wonderful rest of your night and or day.